Hello, and welcome back to episode 3 of Domestic Violence Education. This episode, we're going to be expanding more on the social culture of America and how that can contribute to the connection between domestic violence and gender. To get started, let's take a look at an image that we introduced last episode. This image represents a theory introduced by psychologist Bronfenbrenner called the ecological systems theory. As a developmental psychologist, he believed that how a person develops is influenced by complex relationships on multiple levels of their environment. As the image shows, some parts of the environment interact with the person more intimately, with groups such as parents, teachers, and peers existing on the closest system called the microsystem. The further parts of the environment become more conceptual, including things like cultural values and public policy on the macrosystem. Looking at the arrows between the systems, we see that these levels interact. For example, public policy can determine what school systems are allowed to teach, which influences what teachers can say to students, which influences what an individual learns. With this model, we can also learn about behavior. Public policy can say that schools have to discourage smoking, so teachers have to teach about the dangers of nicotine, so a student then chooses not to smoke. For our focus on domestic violence, we're going to look at the chain between cultural values, mass media, social media, and the individual. To understand how America's social culture could contribute to domestic violence, we need to define culture. According to sociologist William Little, culture is made of tangible, material, and intangible, non-material things. The non-material culture of a society, the focus of this video, includes the society's ideas, attitudes, and beliefs. This includes ideas about normality and value, meaning what is normal and what is abnormal, what is valued and what is not, who holds more value than who. Since our country of focus is America, what are some beliefs or ideas that American society has about gender, and how does that relate to violence? The first belief we can address is about gender stereotypes. Gender stereotypes are when people believe that certain attributes are exclusive or meant for certain genders. Adherence to these stereotypes is considered normal, while deviation is considered abnormal. Let's take a look at the gender stereotypes for men versus for women. The journal Psychology of Men and Masculinity identifies 11 masculine norms for men in the U.S. Some to note are violence, dominance, and power over women. A 2017 article from the same journal found a positive correlation between adherence to the norms of violence and power over women and negative attitudes towards obtaining sexual consent, which was then also positively correlated with lower intentions to obtain consent. The stereotypes for women are almost opposite to the ones for men. For a woman to be considered feminine in the US, she is typically expected to be submissive, motherly, and have a smaller build. The expectations for men and women are noticeably very different, placing men in positions of dominance and authority, while women are expected to fill a submissive and dependent role. Now, let's consider how these cultural values are portrayed in film. In both movies and television across genres, we see characters that fit these stereotypes. For women, we can take a look at Mean Girls and how much of the main cast is focused on their looks and male approval. For men, we can look at Baby Boy and how the male lead displays violence, risk-taking, and a playboy character throughout the film. Some films explore how people who deviate from gender norms are punished, like Maria from the Book of Life, who was sent to a boarding school for not acting like a lady. Other films take advantage of these cultural values to shock their audiences by deviating from them, like the pale blue eye, which takes advantage of the weak woman stereotype and contrasts it with brutal murders to make it difficult for the audience to recognize that the person behind the killings is a woman. Once these films are put out into the world, others are able to view and comment on them, which is where social media comes in. Platforms such as Twitter and Instagram allow people to share information to an audience that is able to discuss the information and share it again. With reactions to film, we can see the idolization of characters and the hate towards others. In this way, individuals are able to identify what is considered normal and what is not. Of course, this all connects back to the individual. These images that connect gender to certain traits help in the formation of schemas. Schemas are our brain's way of sorting information based on defining traits, which helps us interact with the world. For example, a child's schema for dogs may be that the creature is usually four-legged, furry, and wanting to be pet. Not very specific, but if that child saw a golden retriever, they would be able to identify it as a dog and attempt to pet it. This also applies to gender. If the media we consume portrays women as submissive and weak, and men as dominant and violent, then we may start to build schemas that define women and men in these ways. This can also impact a person's self-esteem. Sociologist Anthony Greenwald and colleagues came up with a model called the Gender Self-Socialization Model. The model connects gender, attributes, and the individual. A person who internalizes the stereotypes about the gender they identify with, if they find they themselves do not align with those stereotypes, may feel like less of a man or less of a woman. The person's behavior can also be impacted by media consumption. A person may imitate the people they see in film, whether to feel like more of a man or feel like more of a woman because that's how their gender is represented, or to fall in line with social norms because that's how people on social media believe a man or a woman should act. These influences on the individual all circle back to domestic violence. Consider the expectations for men, such as violence and power over women. A man influenced by these norms through film and social media may use violence against his partner to have power over her. Consider the expectations for women, such as submissiveness. A woman influenced by these norms through film and social media may see these acts of violence as normal or not see herself as capable of defending herself. In either case, we can see how this culture has contributed to domestic abuse against women through film and social media. Thank you for joining us in this lesson. Please join us next episode to discuss how trans women and women of color are uniquely impacted by domestic abuse.